Hey everyone, it is June 28th, 2016, and this is your episode 51 of At Percussion. I'm Casey Cangelosi, and this is Laurel Black.
Hi.
And over there is Ben Charles.
Hi, everybody.
And still in New Hampshire is Megan Arns.
Hello.
So our guest today has performed with Ensemble Modern, Ensemble Signal, Ensemble ACJW, and with members of the Bang on the Can All-Stars, 8th Blackbird, and So Percussion. He is an assistant professor at the University of Kansas, a member of the new Morse Code duo with cellist Hannah Collins, and he is a co-director of the Avaloch Farm Music Institute New Music Initiative, where he and Megan are now. So please welcome to Dr. Mike Compitello. Well, hey, it's great to see you, and you and Megan are there at Avaloch. What's happening today? Are you guys in the middle of rehearsing, or what's going on?
Well, yeah, as I said before, I'm here with electroacoustic group called Switch Ensemble, and we've been here for a week, and we'll be leaving on Thursday. So we're coming to the end of our time here. But Mike has been here for a little bit longer than that, and will be here for much, much, much longer. He's very involved. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about your role here.
Sure. Yeah. So Megan is here with the chamber ensemble, Switch, and what Avaloch is a residency for chamber ensembles. So when you think of residencies or colonies, most of them tend to be sort of solitary ventures, a composer or a writer, a visual artist or a printmaker or something. But what Avaloch is, it's outside of Concord, New Hampshire, and it's a place for chamber ensembles in any stage of development to come for a week to 4 weeks to work on a project, any sort of self-determined project. And my role here with Hannah, the cellist that I play with, is that we curate a month of that season, a 6-month season, that's only for chamber ensembles and composers. So every group that's here, at the moment I think there's 24 people here, starting in the beginning of July, every group that's here will be working with a composer on some project in some position in the project. You know, they're just getting started, they're finishing. And Megan's group, even though they're not officially on the new music time, they're doing just that. So my role here is to make sure nobody is killed swimming in the lake or by overeating the amazing food, and I have our own projects that we work on while we're here. So it's like an adult summer camp.
I just picked up Mike from the dining area where he was making tortillas right before this.
Yeah.
I saw you also have a popcorn tutorial on YouTube.
Oh yeah, that was filmed in this very room. Yeah, it didn't. Hopefully today will go better. Not fire or anything. Yeah.
How long have you been co-directing the New Music Initiative?
Well, this is the second summer of this New Music Initiative, and this is our second year doing it. Avaloch, I don't want to ramble too much, was just built in 2013 by one really gracious former doctor, Fred Tauber, and there was a sort of half-year pilot season, and then this is the third official season and the second season during which there's been this sort of coordinated focus on contemporary music. And it's just super organic because a lot of the groups that came here did bring composers with them, and everybody who was here eventually had the idea, oh, it's nice to be working on something similar in a non-competitive environment. And so yeah, it's just the second year.
Wow. Yeah, some of our previous guests, Transient Canvas, the bass player.
Oh, they were here last year.
Yeah, Small World. Yeah, they're some of our good friends. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, they played. Every week we kind of share what everybody's up to, and they played something like 800 minutes of music that they had learned in the last 6 days or something. And Matt looked like a bald eagle crossed with an octopus, like all over the keyboard. I've never seen anybody stretch like that. Yeah, some amazing page turns.
Yeah.
The piece was being completed as they were starting it, and like the composer is tossing the pages onto the marimba. Yeah,
he's like
great.
Still writing.
Yeah, he's still writing. It's like,
Wow, very cool. Hey, Megan, I think you have something to tell us
Oh, yeah.
about that might be related?
Sure. So while we're at it, we're talking about artist residencies or colonies. I thought I was just curious of what else was out there, because I had never had this experience before. So I did a little bit of research and found some things in the States and a lot of things abroad. So I just want to share a couple of places I found, and I'm just curious if you guys have heard of them before. But one's called Avatar, and it's in Quebec, and it is an association dedicated to research, creation, and broadcast of audio and electronic art. And it offers artists who are professional artists and also those who are just starting out equipment, keyword, equipment and skills necessary in order to support their practices. And I think the other thing about each of these is that they're not just for musicians or just for composers, but there's a little something for everyone. So there's that one, broadcast of audio and electronic art. Harvest Works, it's in New York City. Have you heard of this one? New York Harvest Work. It offers commissions of up to $4,000 to make new work in a state-of-the-art digital media facility. So each artist receives a fee which is used to manage and produce the work. The artist works with a team comprised of a project manager, engineer, and programmer. And new works may include the creation of a new video work with a surround sound audio mix, audio recording and mastering of surround sound piece, the creation of a new web artwork, and the development of a live interactive music video installation system using Max MSP Jitter. So lots of different options there, and obviously those are like big, kind of large-scale project works. Another one is the Visby International Center for Composers. It's in the Baltic Sea region, and it manages and operates an electroacoustic music studio. This next one is in Amsterdam. Stime Studio for Electro Instrument Music is an independent live electronic music center exclusively dedicated to the performing arts. It invites performers, musicians, and visual artists for residencies and provides them with an artistic environment and technical facilities, though which concepts can be given a concrete form. Just a couple more. One is the Titanic Artist in Residence Program. It's 1 to 3 month residencies for sound artists, and they're working in the intersection of sound and contemporary art. This is in Finland. It's been running since 2006, and it shifted its focus to sound in 2013 and made it the first sound art residency in Finland. Have you guys heard of any of these yet?
I've heard of both Titanic and Avatar.
Okay.
But the movies.
Yeah. How many of these are run by James Cameron?
Yeah, right. Is James Cameron the conductor? I suddenly don't.
Costumes required.
I'm not interested in either of these.
Okay. Here's another one. City International des Arts Paris. This one is, let's see, you have to pay for your own expenses or bring in your own funding, and it offers facilities and grand pianos, excellent sound studios, and sound equipment, obviously in Paris. I think we've all heard of this one, Banff's Residency Center in Canada. This has many different residency opportunities for any kind of musician, composer, and sound artists. The residencies are self-directed in nature and provide participants with a period of focused time to concentrate on personal artistic development and work towards a specific project of their own choosing. And they also have different programs you can apply for in specific areas. Like there was a Middle Eastern friend running one last year, I remember. Another one, this one in the States, is MPAC, which is the Experimental Media and Performing Arts Center. It's in Troy, which is near Albany in New York. And this place, have you been there before?
I've been there.
Oh my gosh, this is an amazing facility.
Amazing,
Amazing. Let's see here. It's a, quote, technological pleasure dome for the mind and senses dedicated to the marriage of art and science as has never been done before, end quote. It has 3 acoustically isolated spaces for particular artists or researchers while in residence there. They're ideal for study, office work, or rehearsal space, or for contained work using computers for audio or video. And you can record there too. There's been a lot of great recordings done there. Avaloch is on my list, but we'll have Mike talk about that in a second. But I also had, let me just pull this up here. I found another list on the Savvy Musician website of places just in the States. So I just wanted to briefly mention, there's a lot of them for composers, but briefly mention the ones for musicians. So if you're listening, maybe you can check some of these out and apply for your own projects. One is in Red Wing, Minnesota. It's Anderson Center for Interdisciplinary Studies. One is in Aurora, West Virginia, the Aurora Project Incorporated. Banff, we already talked about. In Basin, Montana, the Montana Artists Refuge. In Ghent, New York, Omni International Arts Center. In Otis, Oregon, Sitka Center. And in Dial, Georgia, Sustainable Arts Society. Well, this is not States. These are some international ones.
Jennifer was talking about last night.
Which one?
The one in Wild.
The Wild Acres Retreat, Little Switzerland, North Carolina, Wild Acres Retreat.
Mm-hmm.
So check some of those out if you're interested in applying. I don't know too much about this, but on the Savvy Musician website there are links to all these so you can get more information. Mm-hmm. You've told us a little bit about Avaloch already, but maybe you could tell us about how you originally got involved and a little bit more about the Institute.
Yeah, well, I mean, what Megan is talking about is something that, we're all of us as percussionists, we tend to have a lot of friends that are kind of like full-time composers, and mm-hmm. One thing that composers and writers and visual artists get used to as a part of their creative diet is going to these residencies. So places like Copeland House or McDowell Colony or Yaddo or places like that where you go for a couple weeks and that's all you do is work on your craft. And like Megan was saying, there aren't that many for chamber ensembles or for people whose primary articulated musical vision is to perform music written by other people. Mm-hmm. And so Avaloch was sort of founded with a desire to create a residency style, retreat style environment for chamber ensembles. So the idea is that we now have access to the type of experience that you would have access to if you were a composer and you got awarded a residency to go 2 weeks at Aaron Copland's house on the Hudson River to just work on that project. And so what Avaloch does is provide people space and time and food for working on a project of their choosing. And it ranges. There are a lot of groups here that are period performance groups. Hannah just wrote this article for Early Music magazine, which is only available in print form because it's an early music magazine, and about some of the Baroque ensembles or the early classical ensembles that come here to do stuff. And basically, the project is whatever you want. When Hannah and I first came, we came with the idea to learn, in 2 weeks, to learn kind of a season's worth of repertoire. Mm-hmm. And some groups come, they've never met before, and they decide they want to start a group, and this is their time to sort of rehearsal binge. And some groups come, the first year that Avaloch opened, there was a great quartet from San Francisco called Del Sol Quartet that came out here, and string quartet. And they came with the intent of the day after they left recording an album. So they spent the time sort of working on that album. Basically, the vibe of an artist residency is that everybody's doing their own thing, and generally you don't see the other people that are there because they're doing their own thing. But what is kind of interesting about Avaloch is that since everybody here is a performing musician in some capacity, we would tend to be more likely to share what we're doing with each other than other people. So every week we have these kind of informal concerts, sharing sessions to just show what everybody's up to. Avaloch was founded by this man, Fred Tauber, and Deb Schur, and Deb runs a great high school winds and strings and piano chamber camp called Greenwood. It's outside of Northampton. And it's one of the thousands of summer camps that are unavailable to percussionists. And basically, Fred met somebody involved. It's a super long story, and he wanted to start a concert hall. And this woman, Deb, said that it would be more effective to start a residency program. And if you're a percussionist, of course, everything's free once you get here, but you have to get here. But the upside is that you basically can leave everything set up the entire time that you're here, which is kind of not an insignificant thing. And I really draw a lot of inspiration from the different groups that come through to see what they're doing and see what they're what they're up to, and I can't wait to see what Switch is up to, and be super pumped that I have to practice a lot more, or to see, just to see. So it's a nice, as somebody who kind of poo-pooed residencies and thinking like, well, I have a practice room, I can get stuff done. There's something to be said for going someplace with the intent of doing that one thing.
Yeah.
Spending basically all day doing that one thing, and it's actually much more effective than you might think for us as percussionists. So it kind of outweighs the sort of logistical challenge of getting to rural New Hampshire with a marimba, instead of timpani or something.
For sure.
It sounds way appealing and way effective.
Why don't you come?
I think about these. I think about projects that I've had that are pieces that aren't hard to write, that I seem to just have a horrible time finding time getting them done. And if I could just find 2 solid days, oh yeah, it'd be done. But finding those days is so tough. So it is very appealing to kind of block out this chunk of time and say, yes, this is where you're going, and that's the plan, and that's what you're doing, and that's it. I
think what's cool, what Megan's ensemble is doing is really great. They're getting ready to go to a festival that you guys are all on faculty for in Spain, and so they're using this time to get that stuff ready. And what's really cool is that they had the typical Avaloch thing, which is one day of kind of getting used to the pace of time here, which is slow but very effective. And then basically the last 3 days, it sounds, at least for me on the outside, like they've learned 2,000 hours of music.
2,000.
Yeah, it's, so that's kind of one model for the group. And next week, let's see. Actually, this last week, just the other day, there was a great percussionist, Owen Weaver, who was on this show.
Yep.
And he was here with a composer, and they spent the week just experimenting with sounds and ideas that I'm sure he talked about. But that's another sort of model. But basically, the project is anything.
And that's really helpful too. Is that it can be on either side of that. That different groups or different individuals can make different use of the space.
Yeah, no pressure too. It's you're not pressured to feel like, okay, not like a summer festival where, okay, on Friday we definitely have to play Pleiad, or else, here you're not pressured to leave with something. So amazing how freeing that can be when you don't have to circle your wagons every day and think, okay, well, can we play the first movement? That's kind of nice, and not that I'm advocating feeling lazy all the time, but it get a lot done.
Yeah,
really
it's
cool.
given us more brain space too, and even just to be able to be in the same place to talk about organizational structure, sending out donor letters and things like that. That when we are together, since we're a long distance ensemble, sometimes it's very stressful, and we do not have time to do those things when we're in the same place. So.
I could see it also, this sort of format lending itself to more experimental pieces, because I know a lot of the time when we have, I have to play this concerto in 3 months, I can learn it in the practice room, and with no problem. But when I'm trying to do something by Mark Applebaum, it becomes a lot more but I don't know when I'll ever use this for a performance. So if you kind of sequester yourself, you can, eliminate that need for, I need to learn it by this date, and just, take it as it comes.
Yeah. I mean, and what's great too is that it's great to see what creative ways people use 2 weeks, what kind of stuff that they come up with. Some string quartets that come here think, okay, we're just going to work on the Bartok fourth quartet, which to me is one of the most intimidating things you could ever say. And some people come in and they say, I'm going to learn this piece that during the school year I literally cannot learn because, I need these 20 air horns or something. That's really fun, and it's also nice. It's amazing how much time during the day, during our normal lives, we kind of waste. And here there's an amazing chef that cooks, and you work 200 feet from where you sleep, and so
It does cut out a lot of that.
It cuts out a lot of the
commuting
I'm
or
on the
cooking
subway
or-
or yeah. So that's been it's been
Do
really
you,
fun.
do you ever miss do you ever miss having a dining hall like you had in undergrad? That's like it's so great. Like you don't realize that you get to go to eat and get back to what you're doing, and yeah,
It's pretty great. That kind of experience is pretty great. Although I would say at Peabody, the food, I don't miss that. But,
oh yeah, no, I don't miss the food. I just miss the
but the
convenience.
experience, yeah.
Ice cream.
Actually, what's cool about
And the
dining
ice
halls-
cream.
oh,
You get ice cream every day.
the thing about dining halls too is that you see everybody.
That's
you
true.
know.
Yeah.
And what's hard sort of when you're out of school is it turns out that your peers or your friends have kind of similar schedules to you, so you don't really see them as often. And what's great about a place like Avaloch is that every day you're seeing, 15 to 25 musicians who are doing fun stuff, and you're talking to them at the meals. And you realize, oh, I kind of missed that.
Yeah.
I kind of missed seeing what's going on. Yeah, I missed that about dorms, the ice cream and the people, but not the pizza.
The actual.
So in terms of the facilities, this might be a really stupid question, but other than I would think pianos, hopefully some that are like baby grands, and sound equipment, as a percussionist, you have to take everything you need. Is that right?
Although I will say that the more people that come as percussionists, the more effective a case I and Hannah can make towards buying some percussion. For example, this year we bought a harpsichord because so many groups come and ask about harpsichords that it turned out that it was really relevant to have. And this year we ponied up and bought a lot, although a very small drop in the bucket of sound gear, which will be really, really helpful too. But we don't have any percussion equipment, so groups tend to kind of come with a big vehicle, which objectively I understand that really sucks, but it's something that I hope we can work on in the future. Fingers crossed,
But still, you can like drive your big vehicle up, like right up to your studio.
So here's kind of a personal question for you guys, because you're both teachers at universities. I know Megan. I don't know if I've ever known Megan to ramp down, and I mean that in a completely complimentary way. Very hard worker through and through. Does this camp for you two personally? Does it feel like a step back and a relaxation, or does it feel like this is you just still going with the next project and getting the next thing done? And are you answering your university email every day and something like that?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I feel like during the school year I'm like an exploding star. I can't do anything for more than 2 minutes without feeling distracted. And what I feel like being in a place like this, or any place where you're sort of physically away, is that you become a little bit more project-oriented. You say, okay, I'm going to work on this, and you stay with that a little bit longer. And that's what I've seen with the groups here, and the people, I mean, nobody's like Megan, but the people that are most similar to Megan that have been here, who are teaching at universities in any instrument, it's pretty, it's cool to see them say, like, you know what, today I'm not going to do my task list of these 100 things, I'm going to work on this, this thing. And so I don't think anybody really ramps down here, but I think, I don't ramp down, but I feel like I'm on train tracks instead of like in a kung fu movie a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's like more space in your brain to do things. Like like we were talking about earlier, if you're not worrying about how you're going to eat your 3 meals a day, or your commute to here or there, or just any of the daily logistics, or I don't have kids or anything, but I'm sure for some people it's time away from. Of course, family's a great thing, but away from that lifestyle where you can just focus on yourself and your own projects. So that frees up so much more space. So even if I am still answering my university email for 30 minutes or an hour or something, there's still a lot more space.
Cool.
I don't feel stressed at all, and also it's just like quiet, so quiet out here. I think, I live in Missouri now, but I think it's still, in Columbia. Wherever you are, there's distraction and city noise and things, and this is very, very, very quiet here. So that also is very cool.
It's cool. The people that I've known that have done residencies, it sort of didn't hit me how effective it was until you were there.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, someone like Andy Akiho, who you all know, was when he won the Rome Prize. You know, he was sort of saying, "Oh, I'm going to be just as effective in Rome as in New York." But it turns out there's something to be said for being sort of away. You know, that's a guy who doesn't put the brakes on ever. If anything, he's like continuously depressing the accelerator. But it's true. It was cool to see him sort of say, "I'm going to speed towards this one target instead of the usual stuff." Maybe you guys are much less distractible than me, but I have an impossible time during a semester, you know, trying to like learn a piece, which sort of takes a certain amount of like rocking back and forth and binging and sort of, you know, a lot of your brain space. It turns out, you know, you like to think, oh, I'll shut off after this session, but it turns out that things keep cooking. Yeah. So
I really agree about
so
that.
I to answer your question, it doesn't seem like people. It seems like people go faster, but they go faster by being more responsive to what their needs actually are, instead of the usual like, clenched. I'm gonna get through the day just by like, clenching through it. But it seems like people actually adopt a little bit more natural rhythm here. At least that's what I've noticed based on the groups that have been here.
Definitely.
Experienced overall with what residencies are like.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing. I'd never even heard of these types of retreats until, I don't know, a few years ago, really. And you know, I've always known the conference model, the workshop model, the seminar model. But yeah, the notion of just being isolated in a pleasant place and doing what you want to, whatever artistic project it may be, sounds pretty amazing. I've actually already, I don't know if this will come to pass because I've tried this before and failed, but in my calendar for next summer, I just blocked off the whole summer, just said, Casey, no. And
nice.
That's an event in my calendar, Casey, no, from end of May till August, you know. And
wow, good for you.
Well, if I hold up, we'll see.
Yeah.
That's really, anyway, the point being that time is incredibly appealing, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Casey, actually, next summer I was going to ask you. I've got like a $300 million grant to come to Charleston, but I guess you can't make it.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
We had mentioned that like it's a great place to meet people and see what other people are up to, and I feel like even though Mike and I teach at universities that are, you know, in adjacent states, I only met him briefly at PASIC, and it seems like we've kind of been maybe running circles around each other a little bit, but we haven't really gotten to like get to know each other at all. So it's been nice to be able to have some conversations. And something that came up in a conversation yesterday that I thought was really cool is that he's a Baroque timpanist.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to bring that up before to make sure that gets on here. And maybe you can tell us a little bit how you got into that.
Yeah.
It was such a unique thing.
Well, you know, I did my master's at Yale, and Yale's fortunate to have a really great early music program. They have a certificate in early music, which I guess they don't have anymore, for basically a trio sonata ensemble, and then they have a lot of different ensembles. And I sort of fell in through Hannah, my duo partner, who plays a lot of Baroque cello. Fell into playing with these things, and I found it extremely fun. There's something about playing period instruments that I don't want to ramble, but that's super cool. So it became something that I really liked. It sort of scratched both the nerd itch and the drum itch at the same time, and it's been something that I've been doing more and more. I recommend to everybody, because you realize that, like, you know, somebody with a pretty orchestral background, you kind of grow up being trained that certain composers didn't know what they were doing with regard to percussion, you know, and with regard to orchestration and the winds and stuff. But when you play with an entire orchestra that's all playing those style of instruments, all of a sudden, oh yeah, actually Bach, he did mean forte, or, you know, Mozart did mean roll here, or it becomes a really interesting window. and it reflects on what our modern instruments sound like. You know, the sounds that we filter out as percussionists as being that's what timpani sounds like. You know, maybe don't necessarily 100% of the time have to be there. And I also like that they're very small. So it's that's kind of fun.
Well, we had friends of ours here. Friends of ours were here just, I guess, last week for a Bach festival that happens here. And of course, it's not just Bach. They play all sorts of Baroque instruments, and he is a viol player. Mm-hmm. So that's of course the predecessor to the cello, and it's really great hearing that ensemble, harpsichord, a few viols, and maybe recorder and soprano. We went to one of their concerts, and yeah, it's just a totally cool color palette.
I recommend to everybody is listening to these. There's this kind of new wave in period performance practice where all of a sudden, in the last 10, 15 years, the people that play music of the 17th, 18th, and early 19th century are actually really good. Mm. And what you hear is this like phenomenal freedom with stuff that we are trained to not mess around with. Mm-hmm. But the music of the Baroque was intended to be very flexible, and the way that you know period violinists play and stuff, it's just like it's astonishing to see the level of freedom and rapport people can have on stage with each other. It's so free and yeah, very fun.
Cool.
Not to nerd out too much.
Are there a lot of Baroque timpanists?
I think there are. Yeah. You know, it's the sort of thing where
society.
Well, there used to be, but it's one of those things where you know, like if you play principal percussion in the Boston Symphony, you probably aren't seeing a lot of other orchestras because you tend to be working when they play. So, right. You know, I'm kind of an ignorant newcomer, but there's a fair amount in Europe. There are a ton of really interesting guys and girls that play extremely well, all sorts of different levels of nerdiness. But, you know, smaller than you'd think, but probably more than you'd think. There should be like a PASIC, early PASIC.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Laurel, what have you been reading this week?
Yeah, so today I want to talk about something that I think we all know quite well, and that's when you're listening to a piece of music and you get the chills. You actually get this physical sensation from listening to it. That's actually called Frisson, which is spelled Frisson, and it's a French term that means aesthetic chills, which feels like waves of pleasure running all over your skin. They think that somewhere between half to 2/3 of the population have this reaction, but scientists have long debated why. So for at least 50 years, there's been acknowledgement of this phenomenon, but no explanation for it. And various people who have studied music and psychology have said that perhaps it's from our centuries-learned musical expectations, and sometimes they're not met, so you get the chills, whether by a piece of music or by a performer, whether that's, you know, a sudden change of chord or this unassuming performer is actually a badass, that can give you the chills because it's totally not what you expected. Or sometimes it's the opposite, when the music does kind of what you're hoping it will do, whether that's this huge climactic phrase or a resolution that you're hoping is coming and then it finally lands.
Is this specifically the chill feeling, or is it all emotional response to music?
It's specifically the chills. Oh, okay. So that frisson, specifically that is what was studied. So something that's happened recently, I think in May, they published the findings of a new study that was done about this sort of chill factor. So to investigate what happens in the brain during this, a group of researchers from Harvard and Wesleyan University selected 10 people who claimed that they regularly experience this phenomenon of frisson while listening to music, and then also selected 10 that have said it never happens to them, won't ever happen to them. The researchers looked at the brains of these test subjects while they listened to chill-inducing music using a method called diffusion tensor imaging, which shows how well regions of the brain are interconnected. And the choices of music they played, some was Coldplay, some was Wagner, and some of it was the Blue Devils. So they really kind of like covered all of it for whatever anybody might like. And I think the best way to sum up what they found is to just read you the abstract from the study. So the researchers wrote, humans uniquely appreciate aesthetics, experiencing pleasurable responses to complex stimuli that confer no clear intrinsic value for survival. However, substantial variability exists in the frequency and specificity of aesthetic responses. While pleasure from aesthetics is attributed to the neural circuitry for reward, what accounts for individual differences in aesthetic reward sensitivity remains unclear. Using a combination of survey data, behavioral and psychophysiological measures, and diffusion tensor imaging, we found that white matter connectivity between sensor processing areas in the superior temporal gyrus, does appear somewhere, and emotional and social processing areas in the insula and medial prefrontal cortex explains individual differences in reward sensitivity to music. Our findings provide the first evidence for a neural basis of individual differences in sensory access to the reward system and suggest that social emotional communication through the auditory channel may offer an evolutionary basis for music making as an aesthetically rewarding function in humans. So this is actually kind of a really, really huge deal in the sense that they have proven that people who feel chills to music actually have more nerve fibers that connect the auditory cortex to the anterior insular cortex, which is the region that processes feelings, that there is something anatomically different in people that experience that. And what's hard to know is whether that's learned over time or whether people are born with it. So that's kind of the next step, and that's obviously a very long-term study whenever that happens, is trying to figure that out. But I read this and I was just kind of like, oh my God. I thought it was such a huge deal because we've known for a long time that the profession of being a musician is the only one that actually affects your brain structure. And I've talked about that before, about how autopsies, the auditory cortex is actually larger. There's literally more matter there in every sense of the word. And so to think that even people who don't, choose to participate in music in that professional way, their brains are actually wired differently is really, really profound. And, as they mentioned, in terms of our evolution and humanity as a whole, that connection of listening to the emotional processing center, it's going to make you a better communicator in every single way. It makes you a better listener, and it means that you gain more information from listening, in a way. And if you're like me, I started to wonder, well, what's the difference between these groups of people, the 10 people that experience Frisson and then the 10 that don't? What determines that? And I found that actually this has been studied quite a bit, and I found a study from 2007 that talked about this in terms of what predisposes people to experiencing the chills from time to time. And they did a study involving the NEOPIR kind of personality test and linked it to a personality trait and this experience of Frisson. So the NEOPIR test is essentially a 240-item questionnaire that measures 5 basic personality traits that exist in all people. The 5 are neuroticism, extroversion, openness to experience, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. They've done this study with over 50 different cultures. It's been translated into, I think, 40 different languages, and every single time people that experience Frisson, this physical response to aesthetic pleasure, every single time, they score very high in the openness to experience personality trait. Every single time. Yeah, and the people that don't experience it score very low in that. And so I just thought that was so cool, and I just had to share that with you guys.
Explain what does that openness mean exactly? Like openness to personality trait.
Well, and then that's
What do they
something
mean
that
by that?
right now I just kind of had to infer what that meant, because this rabbit hole of reading was like hundreds of pages long, and my guess is that openness to experience is just that you're willing to question things, or question your own assumptions about things, about the world, about what you already know or what you need to know. Being open, like thinking perhaps you could gain something from a piece of music, means that you have the potential to be affected by it. But if you have already decided that it's stupid to you, that you don't need it to enhance your life, you won't experience something.
I'm sure it's different test to test, but I wonder if people change, like if it's possible for people to be in different categories at different points in their life.
Yeah, that's
depend on the test, and how specific the test is and what exactly it's measuring. But I wonder if in any way that would be helpful in the research of figuring out if someone is born with these nerves or whatever. I'm sorry, I don't know all the terminology, but if someone's born with that or if they develop it over time. You know?
Yeah, totally. And how like life experiences change the balance of all five traits.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, do you guys all experience the chills?
I do. Do you?
Yeah.
I do, yeah.
Yeah. I have that, what is it called? That's what I was trying to look up. The MASM, the stimulus thing where certain types of sounds like activate.
Yeah,
I was going
to bring that up too. It's
I can't remember the
ASMR, I looked it up, autonomous sensory meridian response.
Yes, I have that.
Oh.
Yeah, and if you go on YouTube and you search for ASMR, you get literally thousands of videos.
Whisper form.
And they use.
No.
Uh-oh.
Ben.
Did I freeze?
You froze. You got to back up.
You did back up to thousands of videos.
Yeah, they use this special microphone to make these videos. It's called a binaural. Basically, it looks like two ears. And like the person like leans in and like whispers in one ear, then they go to the other and they whisper, and then there's always like some sort of like scraping or opening packaging, and they're like these videos are like an hour long, like they're not little 5-minute clips. And I've watched so many of them at this point that like my YouTube like recommendations are just like all ASMR. But
what's the purpose of that?
Yeah, what is it supposed to do to you?
Like if you listen to it, like, and it's funny, like from what you said, it seems like 50% of the people that listen to these are like, I don't get it, and then the other 50% get it, and basically like it just kind of puts you in a trance, like it gives you the chills. And like for me, it's something like it's really relaxing at night to just like listen to someone chewing gum or something apparently through this weird microphone.
I experienced this, that's the reason why I can't ever work with any sound around me, because certain types of sounds they generate, it's not qualified as chills, but it's like a very like protracted nerve response where you're just like, for better or for worse, it's kind of like, it's not, I wouldn't say it's like an amazing or terrible feeling, it's just a scintillation.
And is it specific sounds, or is it
I like the
volume of sounds?
It's I would say it's like a sort of structured crooning, like something that's very soft but appears to you very loud.
Oh, okay.
Like of someone turning the pages of a book.
Okay.
Or that recent David Lang opera that he wrote for Ice, where everybody whispers very softly.
What about those pieces like Amplified Cactus by John Cage, or the piece where you put contact microphones on snow, or
with like a more repetitive ambient sound? Again, I'm speaking out of complete ignorance here. This, like Ben said, it's a rabbit hole that if you probably will find out about it if you need to know about it, or if you discover, once you discover it, it's
And then I looked up ASMR on Wikipedia, and it said it has been compared with auditory tactile synesthesia, which I think it's actually kind of like a good way of describing it. Like, for anyone not familiar, synesthesia is like the linking of two senses. So some people will hear, a piece and go, "Oh, that sounds like the color blue." And for this, I think it's like, oh, you hear these sounds and it feels like tingling in your neck, or it makes your shoulders feel a certain way, or something like that.
That happens to me when I watch South Park. I can't listen to the voices on South Park.
Really?
They make me like.
It's the biggest point of contention in our relationship.
I was going to say, that's going to be
problem.
hard living with Casey.
I have a similar thing with metal spoon at the end of a plastic yogurt cup.
What?
It's one of the most. That sound like puts hairs up on the back of my neck.
Like in a bad way.
In a bad way, yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's a good way. Emotional response. No, but I was just thinking about the phenomenon of this because the Italian Madrigal group.
Yeah.
There was this amazing early music group, vocal ensemble here earlier in the week. And yeah, they did on their show and tell thing, they sang some Italian madrigals and and yeah, I got the chills twice, and I was just thinking about it because I could literally look at your arm, and you're like, I actually have goosebumps right now, and so yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
The phenomenon.
I remember. I don't know if it was the first time it happened to me, but it sticks out in my mind. Probably high school when I really started to notice that I liked music a lot because I would be listening and then I would just get the chills and I was like, is this normal? Does this happen to people? And I remember specifically I loved the chorale of Rhapsody in Blue. And I have a lot of personal connection to that, which I'll share at a later time when it's relevant. And I loved, and this is going to totally tell you what kind of high school kid I was, I loved the end of Phantom of the Opera when you've got the D-flat suspended on top, just a single D-flat, and he writes the 4-chord progression before finally resolving, and 2 of the chords are like D major and C major, so you get this gorgeous grind against it, and then it finally resolves. Yeah, I remember those things sticking out in my mind. What about you guys?
Man, I've got a lot. Don't ask me. I don't want to ramble any more than I.
No, you're a guest.
Have.
You should answer.
What are some good?
One for me, and just what he's thinking is, and this is just a stupid example, but you mentioned one of the 3 that in the study was drum corps, was the Blue Devils. And man, marching drum corps and listening to the horn line warm up, like when the horn line would arc up and do their warm ups, that sound is so loud. And so I don't know, I just always got chills when I heard the horn line warming up. And for me, that I was like, I'm a percussionist, and I don't, it shouldn't have any real emotional response to me, I didn't think, but always that sound gets me. It's really beautiful.
Well, I think also with that, Megan, part of that is the environment that you're in. And actually, this is a weird thing for me, but I can, especially for some reason during my master's degree, there are certain pieces that I associate with the temperature it was outside, the smell of the rooms, or the foods that I was eating. I can't, this is really weird, but I can't think about con variations without thinking about apple crisp. Because I ate apple crisp all the time when I was learning con variations, and it's just it's that weird sort of emotional response.
So much apple crisp, unless you learn music faster than me.
Do you guys find that these moments that get you, the more you experience them, the less their potency is? Because I think about, I pick some of my favorite moments that I just have recordings of to share with, say, classes. And usually they work for them as well. These students respond really well, and they say, "What was the name of that guy again? What was that composer? I want to get that recording. That was really great." And one that comes to mind is I think it's Shostakovich's Second Piano Concerto. There's the Andante movement or Adagio movement. I forget what it's labeled, but if you guys know this, you know exactly what movement I'm talking about. But it's just really sappy, gorgeous, and great. And it still gets me, but man, not like it used to. It used to kind of be like, hey, I got to turn this off because. So I don't know. Do you think do you think it? Have you experienced that? Has it run out? You know, does it wear off?
For me, it doesn't, and I think part of it has to do with the fact that music takes time. It's kind of like riding a roller coaster. If you could ride a roller coaster for 8 hours in one day, you'd be sick of it by the end. But the fact that you have to go wait in line for an hour to get on it, and then you go up the hill slowly, and then you get the thrill, like I can't compress a piece of music that's 20 minutes long into a 10-second, thrill and play that over and over and over. I have to listen to the long thing to get that effect of going into a point. So for me, it's not about like the texture of the moment so much as like the journey of getting there.
Right. And I think it's a cumulative effect. Of course, if you fast forward 5 minutes into the piano concerto, it's not nearly as effective as if you endure those 4 minutes 59 seconds up to that point. But sort of like Mark Applebaum said, the biggest bang for your buck is the first time.
Yeah, but I think I don't think that I'm qualified to talk about this because I think I'm kind of maybe an exception to the rule, and that and maybe not, but I've always been very obsessive about the things that I listen to, and I remember the first obsession I ever had. This is a weird thing to admit on air.
Beatles.
The first obsession I ever had was Scott Joplin Ragtime. And when I was like in second grade, no joke, I had one like CD of Scott Joplin Ragtime, and tracks 4 and 7 were Maple Leaf Rag and The Entertainer, respectively, and I wore those things out like over and over, and it never got old. And still to this day, when I hear that, I'm like, oh yeah, I still like this piece. So
at least it wasn't Nirvana, Nevermind or something.
That was next. No, I kid.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you mean like as if you get desensitized to that experience?
Well, yeah, because you learn the piece and you know it's coming. And...
I would wonder, like, the phenomenon is so connected to the part of your brain that processes emotions. As we get older, we get better at dealing with certain emotional situations that maybe the first time they happen to us were completely devastating, and we kind of adapt. I wonder if it's somehow like that. Like we get
that's what I would expect, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that's why we keep listening to new things. Go ahead, Ben.
Zach Browning kind of talked about like the Pavlov's dog with In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins, and he said every single time I hear it now, like I'm like start salivating because I want that to happen. So I think it could go either way, where it loses its response, or you're just like because you know it's coming, you're that much more excited.
Yeah.
So I've got a really killer segue here, so I'm gonna jump in and do it. A piece that I think really I was affected in this way by, and I think a lot of other people would agree, is Osvaldo Goliov's duet for cello and marimba, which Mike Compitello has a wonderful recording of with his duo partner in new Morse Code, and I was wondering if you would talk a little bit about your duet.
Oh yeah, sure. New Morse Code is myself and my friend Henry Collins, and we started together sort of out of a joint desire to, think about ourselves mostly as like advocates for the music that we care about, just sort of performers. We both were in school together, then in Europe for a while, back together. I was telling Megan last night that we sort of bonded over the kinds of experiences we had going to concerts. She was in the Netherlands and in Germany, and concerts here. And basically, what we wanted to do was play music together that we felt most excited about sharing, because I think both of us are people that really love music. I know it's kind of cool these days not to care, but I really love music, and Hannah really loves music, and so kind of what we try to do is to show the music that we love, and we're fortunate that we have a lot of friends that are really talented, and so we try to share their music by working with them over a long period of time on new pieces that kind of represent what we're like as people and what we're like as musicians. So that's sort of the goal of the group. But when we first got going, playing together just for fun, we started learning all of the extant pieces, a lot of the great pieces that Steve Schick and my advisor commissioned together in the 90s, and then some ancient history, so before 1990. But basically, that's what we do as an ensemble. So our album, which will be coming out soon. Stay tuned.
Awesome.
Is all pieces that we've commissioned and commissioned and collaborated on with people over a long time. We got a great piece by Tonya Coe, which we worked on for a long time with her. A piece from Caroline Shaw. It's for cello and flower pots. A great piece from Rob Honstein Patter for violin, cello, and marimba, and a great piece from Paul Karakis for percussion, cello, and piano too. So that's sort of what we're about and what we're up to. And we were really fortunate to get some great advice when we were first starting to play together, which is basically to look for things that two people can do and not just look for things that a cellist and a percussionist can do. So that's led us to some really fun things, acting, speaking, singing, dancing, unfortunately, and some other stuff like that. And so we like to think that our main goal in life is to be creative facilitators. And so that's sort of what the group is about, and we're lucky that at least we get along enough to be stressed out together, which is why we made these great stress balls. Stress, just think about our ensemble.
Excellent.
You guys just had some shows in New York as well?
Mm-hmm.
What were you playing there? What was that?
Oh gosh, we played just recently at this great series in Brooklyn called Concerts on the Slope. We played a new piece from our friend Chris Stark, who is a composer, teaches out at WashU in St. Louis. And his piece is called Language of Landscapes, and we received a Chamber of Music America grant to commission it. And the piece is really about I'm from Arizona, and Hannah is from upstate New York, and Chris is from western Montana, and the piece is about the way in which our natural habitat sort of shapes us as people, and also by the fact that there's very little recycling in New Hampshire. So he and I and Hannah went around recording a bunch of different sounds that he processed, and the piece is a 25-minute piece for cello, percussion, and electronics that's sort of in 4 scenes about sort of our impact on the natural world. So there's one scene where Hannah's playing all these different harmonics that are rhythmicized according to the overtone series, and I'm doing a bunch of bottle blowing. And then there's a movement where he's taken the sound of water flowing in upstate New York and sort of gradually crushed it, so it becomes more and more rhythmic, and we play this sort of canon off of it. And then it ends with an incredible canon for oscillating table fan that's attached to sort of a harmonizer, so it plays a little 4/1 cadence over and over. It goes over that. So that was something that we're doing, and we'll perform again up in a series in Bennington in a few weeks.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's a total joy, and it's great, awesome to play not with a percussion. It's not that percussion's not great, but it's a real joy. Yeah.
What is the deal with no recycling in New Hampshire?
Well, maybe it's just Avaloch that we're not a big enough business. I think that you've got to live free when you die. So we'll figure it out by the time you all come to Avaloch.
Yeah, I'm expect to see an application.
Yeah.
From at least myself. Yeah.
Awesome.
Hey, I was going to say, Mike, I really love your website, and
It's really great. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Oh my gosh.
it's really great because all the traditional stuff is there. If you're looking for bio, you can find bio. If you're looking for contact, all of that. But it has just a very approachable. I don't know. It's just easy on my brain and my eyes. And I was going to ask real quick. Do you do all that yourself?
I did it all myself. I did the WordPress thing for a long time, and I don't know, percussionists tend to be like this. We're kind of gear junkies, right? Which is why most of us don't have other hobbies. Otherwise, you'd probably own like 20,000 bicycle chains, right? And I just got tired of doing this stuff, so I did Squarespace, and then
So that's Squarespace.
Yeah, I just messed around with it a lot, but it's. I mean, maybe you guys are all better at this, but I feel like I'm the worst website updater. Because for me, it's kind of fun to update your website, so I think, I'll do it as a fun thing, but then you run out of time every day.
Yeah.
But
I'm not very good at it. Updating is hard.
It's hard, right? It's yeah, internet.
Internet.
But you're still way ahead of Mark Applebaum's website.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, when we edited in,
level that we're just killing.
we're killing him. Yeah.
Sorry, Mark.
Sorry, maybe I'll turn mine to a Zanga soon, or like a GeoCities page.
I haven't heard those words in like 8 or more.
No, I received a lot of great input from Caroline Shaw, whose website is an awesome experience that she does herself. But my big takeaway though is it's much better to get somebody to do it for you. If you are the kind of person that struggles with decisions, or the kind of person that is obsessed about very tiny things that nobody else notices, you'd probably be better off getting somebody to do it for you.
Sure.
Good point.
Ben, I think you had a question.
Yeah, it's been a year now since you got the job at University of Kansas, but we've talked quite a bit recently about auditioning for jobs and winning jobs and so on. Could you tell us about your experience getting the job at Kansas?
Oh man, sure. Stressful. How long of an answer do you want? No, I mean, for those of us that are in school as percussionists, those of us of a certain age. I'm not old, but when you're in a pretty strict school, the sort of most typical career paths are, okay, you're going to win a job and be in an orchestra, you're going to be an internationally famous soloist, or you're going to teach at a university, right? And I'm fortunate that my family are people that are university teachers, and so that's something that's always been something I've been pumped about doing, and that's why I pursue doctorates in music in any way. So the experience of auditioning for Kansas, I'm not sure how nitty-gritty you want. I was really lucky that one of my best friends, Chica Jung, was there before me, and so it was, and I had been fortunate to be there the year before, just visiting with Morse Code to play some concerts and to do some teaching and stuff. But I mean, I'm sure previous guests have touched upon this. The experience is it's very different from what you would tend to be good at if you're a percussionist. So you have to present your credentials in a way that invites a committee of non-percussionists, invites and inspires them to look more closely at what you're like. You need to present a sort of persona as an artist that implies that you have strong individualized research interests but cover a wide variety of bases in your skill set, because music in America is pretty underfunded these days, so the days of being hired to be the guy who's going to teach soft snare drum rolls are probably numbered in most schools. And then you need to be able to prove that you are a nice, non-sociopathic person that could be a nice colleague. Those are kind of like the bedrock principles. And so for me, the experience of auditioning for any job is basically the experience of ritualized failure. I mean, maybe you guys, I have this folder on my website that's on my computer, that's stuff I've applied for, and it's greatest hits, thousands of applications for all sorts of stuff. And so you generally apply and then you basically assume, okay, well that was it, and then the process, once if your application continues, you do some sort of phone interview or Skype interview, and generally people say that that's sort of to prove that you're not a robot or insane, and and you have to talk about what you're like, your teaching philosophy if you have one, or what you would do, or questions like that. It's really hard for me to not make a lot of jokes right now. And then there's some sort of on-campus interview where you come, and my parents are, my dad's a Spanish teacher, so when people come and do an interview, they teach a class, they meet a bunch of people, and they usually wear some sort of tweed thing, and and they do that. But what's unique to music university auditions is that you generally have to play something, and you generally have to you have to teach in front of people. And I don't know what you guys have found, but for me, this is the weirdest, most artificial kind of teaching, because it's 20 minutes to prove to a bunch of non-percussionists that you are effective on some person you've never met on a piece that you may never have heard before. And so, you know, if you're working with somebody, you know, if you're working with your student Chad, you're going to see Chad for 2,000 hours. And so you can say, like, hey, man, move your pinky. It's not going to get any better. But, you know, when you're in front of these people, it has to be like a cooking show almost, because you have to show, like, oh,
Right.
I know what to do with a freshman who is holding his music upside down. Or
Right.
I know what to do with a doctoral student who's way better than I am. So that's what the experience. But for me personally, with the Kansas thing, it was the best of all circumstances because it's a school where people were really nice. They were really pleasant. Mm-hmm. And we've all been there where you're playing someplace or you're interviewing someplace or you're working with some people and they're not cool and they're not nice. And it really sours your experience. And you know, I actually thought they were gaming me or messing with me with how nice everybody was. You know, like, when is Ashton Kutcher going to come out and tell me that, you know, I'm flanked or something? So that was my experience. I don't know if you want to hear anything more or less specific, but it's definitely, it seems like it's a skill, not a talent.
Yeah.
And it's a collection of stuff, combination of stuff you might need to know versus what you're like as a person. I mean, I believe in this 80-20 rule where 80% of what you get done in a given situation is kind of related to what you're like. And so somehow, sometimes that's a very helpful.
I found that the hardest part for me was, like, if I'm going to go play a concert and I know what the concert hall looks like, I can kind of like run through how it's going to go in my mind. But when they say, oh, you're going to have a lunch meeting and then you're going to do a 30-minute mini recital in this room, you're like, I don't know what that room is going to be like, or what's the lunch meeting going to be like? Is that just lunch, or are you going to ask me questions? You know. So yeah, that's I think the hardest part is you don't really know what you're getting into. And for me, I did 2 years with electronics, so I was like, I don't even know what the speakers are going to work. You know.
Yeah, I know, and it feeds into this thing though. It's something I'm sure you've all touched upon or think about, just sort of what are the skills in music school that one might need to learn. You know, our music conservatory model is a mid-19th century model, which trains people to do a certain type of thing with a certain set of skills, right? So the question now is, if you're a percussionist in 2016, what are you supposed to learn that's going to be the most valuable thing for you in a career in music? It seems like one of those things might be how to get a career in music, and you know, like the types of skills that you might need to like, for someone to just tell you when you're in college at the lunch meeting, somebody is probably going to ask you something like this, or you probably won't be able to warm up in any place you go, or you know what I mean, that kind of stuff. It sort of goes hand in hand with maybe you should think about formatting your resume not in Comic Sans or things like that, you know. Yeah, it's very surprising, I guess, at first for most people, but it seems to me it's something that we should all think about becoming part of our teaching repertoire, right?
Right, absolutely. I think so, for sure.
I was fortunate that I had, at the schools I attended, you know, a teacher that was really aggressive about that, and it was something that we would practice as a studio. You know, there's nothing more humiliating than doing a phone interview in front of 5 of your best friends and trying to sound like you know what you're talking about.
That's good. Yeah.
But you know, if you extend that, you know, it's, you know, what all of you guys are doing. It seems like part of being a percussionist is being comfortable with the new too, right? And so I struggle with this all the time. You know, what am I supposed to teach? Am I supposed to teach what I learned in school, which was basically how to get into an orchestra? Or should I teach what I think is really valuable, which is like how to work with somebody who plays another instrument as you on a new piece of music for which you can advocate really strongly, and how to be in a lifestyle where some days you're talking and some days you're drumming and some days you're drumming and talking and some days you're writing and some days you're recording and some days you're coiling cables and stuff. Like, what are we supposed to do to prepare people for that, you know? I don't know. That's a
totally.
Sorry,
there's so many
it's
things.
It's a big question, yeah.
And there are often so many students too who each person, wants to do something
Yeah, but
different.
it strikes me that that's something that just a little bit of knowledge is really helpful. It's always cool if you happen to be in a school situation to ask somebody who teaches at the school who's not a percussionist, what's it like looking through 200 resumes for the flute professor job, or what are you
That's
looking
true.
for, or what kind of questions would you ask people, or what kind of thing is most impressive? Because for us as percussionists, we get excited about drums, but it's certain pieces that are very percussion-y. Maybe if you play bassoon, doesn't have that same impact.
Right. Have any of you guys been on search committees before?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've never been on a search committee.
I have not either, yeah.
But yeah, I think that would be, interesting. Very interesting seeing on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been. I know I talk about the last gig a lot, and one of the things I really learned from there was search committee, because there was so many moving pieces, and people would come and go frequently, and that meant I'd end up on some search committees, Laurel, as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was surprising how bothersome it was if somebody's resume was in a font that you couldn't read.
Comic Sans, like you said.
Yeah, no, this one that I'm thinking of was really tall and narrow, and I was like immediately irate.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Papyrus. You ever got the resume in Papyrus?
Right.
The restaurant font.
Yeah.
Well, and like Mike said, he had a teacher that really advocated how to apply and what to do, and a big revelation for me was, hey, there are certain steps you can take that make this a lot more doable and practical, and you can practice a phone interview, you can practice mock questions, and that's really, really helpful, because you're not, building the narrative you'll tell, but you're just building and practicing the ability to get your information quickly and know how to access it quickly off the tip of your tongue, and it's not cheating to practice. Practice is a good thing, but I did not have a teacher that that pushed any of that or made phone calls on my behalf or anything, and but I see now the importance of that, because you look at who's out there getting what, it's like, oh yeah, they've got some teachers backing them, and that's great, And of course, my teachers have been wonderful references, and when they were called to speak on our behalf, they're really sweet and really helpful, and it's a great thing.
But what's cool is happening these days is that more and more percussionists are really at the forefront of contemporary music. It's like the time set drums are the new violins. And when you're a musical entrepreneur, or if you run an ensemble, or if you're used to interacting about music, you get pretty used to talking about interesting things that you may be involved with pretty quickly.
That's true.
That elevator speech comes a little bit more naturally. But it's uncomfortable, for people who are not so keen to talk about themselves. It definitely seems like there's a fine line, right, between feeling like arrogant, describing what you're doing, and then the necessity to tell somebody who literally does not know you,
Right.
I do this.
Well, and I guess that's the value of practicing it, is you learn how to get that out in an efficient way that can feel and sound genuine and is honest. Yeah. Well, that was a really great response. Thanks, and you actually answered one of our Facebook questions from Ted Jackson, because you talked a little bit about your teaching, and another part of his question was, since you advocate so much of this chamber ensemble playing, do you find that some of your students there at Kansas are seeing that as kind of a career path, and are they forming little chamber groups of their own just based off of seeing?
I hope so. I mean, it's only been a year, but I know that my predecessor, Jihei, had a lot of students who got really involved with starting groups. And a great lesson I took from being at Yale surrounded by great composers, Martin Bresnik and David Lang, is that your community in school, your peers, will be your musical community for your life. So you might as well play with them while you have a little bit more time. And the kinds of work that you can do in school is way more focused and detailed than you'll probably be able to do outside of school. That's a goal of mine, to have people who leave the program eventually be involved with chamber ensembles that are really they're really passionate about. And it's definitely a big part of the way that I think about teaching music and thinking about music. I've been really fortunate to play with somebody who's not a percussionist, and it forces you, I'm sure as Megan knows, into manipulating your sound in a lot more ways, more frequently than you might otherwise think about. You know, if you're playing, if I watch Hannah play the cello, she's got millions of ways of starting every note and ending every note all the time. And so for her, she's not thinking about the 8 essential stroke types that she needs to play. She's thinking about a musical character and triggering these sort of impulses. And I find that percussionists, I mean, in my super limited experience, they're able to get at that a little bit faster when they're not just alone. Yeah. And when somebody's like, hey, Ted, can you match my sound? And that happens really fluidly in percussion groups and percussion ensembles and mixed chamber ensembles. The trick is sort of how do you do it? You know, like how do you structure your curriculum so that people can do that? But I hope that people that, you know, in 2 or 3 years that people leaving Kansas are leaving with something that they want to continue doing, and that they want to be, you know, the big part of their diet when they're gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man, Mike Compitello, thanks so much for joining us. Megan, great snag.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Yeah, I wish we had a room with as much drums as you have.
I know. I try to just have so many drums. It makes it look like it makes it makes it look like I'm way busy.
Yeah. So many drums. Yeah, I love it.
After that, I can see Casey's office filled with like multiple percussion setups, just to make it look like he's working on something.
That's right. Hey, this little piccolo snare right here, $60. Yeah.
You trying to sell it?
No, I bought it for $60 new.
Sounds like
and that's not artist price or anything. That was just new. I feel like, man, they've helped me with so many things. I'm just gonna buy it because it's cheap. And anyway, side note. And on another side note, and speaking of snare drum, your impressions recording is really great. I love how you're in the Vic Firth.
My praise comes from the high priest of the snare drum himself.
Oh, right, thanks. Sure. No, it's a great recording.
I'm working on something, a commission of 5 great young women composers for solo snare drum pieces. Awesome. So prepare to be emotionally barraged with. Awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe that drum can be involved.
It should be. It should.
Yeah, one of the requirements, you have to play Casey's personal snare drum.
Yeah.
You have to borrow it.
Man, hey, well, thanks everyone. Great segment, Megan. Great segment, Laurel. Thanks so much, and we'll catch you guys later at 52.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.